Hi guys, PatrickReza here. Today I'm going to be giving you insight on how I process my kick drums in Ableton Live to give them a bigger, more professional, and high quality sound.
1, 2, 3.
Whether it's hip hop, rap, electronic music, dance music, anything across the board, the kick drum is hands down the most important part and facet of your song. So with that said, the kick drum can absolutely make or break your song, and I'm going to show you some tips on how to make sure it doesn't break your song. So to start, I'm going to go over one preference setting that a lot of you guys might not know about in Ableton. So to get there, we're just going to go up to the edit folder and hit preferences, and then from there you'll get this window, and you're going to want to go down to the record warp launch preference tab. From there you're going to look at your create fades on clip edges. Now mine has been turned off, but by default Ableton has this turned on, and what that does is it'll create a fade on your kick drum, which can totally kill the punch on a kick drum. So just to give you an idea of what that would look like, if this is turned on and you drag a kick into the Ableton song, instead of getting the attack of the kick right here, you'll have a fade on it, which will actually take away the sonic quality of the punch and the kick from the very beginning. So you're going to want to make sure to go into your preferences and just make sure that's turned off before we begin. Once you've got that set up, then the next thing I'm going to talk about is sample selection. Sample selection is super vital to your kick drum. It really is important that you start with a good quality kick drum, and you can get these from splice packs. You can make your own in Serum. I'll be going over that in a next episode. But it's very important that you get your kick drum sounding good. So I have just selected this kick drum. It's from a sample pack off of Splice, and I'm just going to play it for you so you can get an idea of what it sounds like. So pretty punchy, pretty good, but we can do things to make it sound better, more higher quality, more professional. So with that said, the first thing I do is I tune my kick drum. So the way you can do this, the easiest way to do it is a lot of people will say drop a tuner on there, but the tuner sometimes isn't fully accurate. So what you're going to want to do is get a spectrum, and you can get that from the Ableton audio effects. And you're just going to want to drag that onto your channel. So once you have it on your channel, then you can click this little triangle and it'll pop out a much higher quality view of the spectrum. So with that, when I play my kick drum, if we look in this bottom left corner, we get a few numbers and letters. So what these numbers represent is the frequency. So we have a hertz, that's a numeric value for the frequency, a note value with the octave value, and then how loud it's being played at, so the decibel value. So with that said, if I play this kick drum and I put my mouse right at the peak value, so I put my mouse right at the peak value, if you look in the bottom left corner down here, it says 49.8 hertz roughly, and that's the loudest peak of the entire kick drum. So I can come to the conclusion that this kick drum is tuned to G, if you see the letter below, 49.8 hertz. And so with that, now, if I'm writing my song in G minor, I'm good to go. But if I'm writing my song in maybe F or F sharp or A even, I need to pitch it up or down. So if you want to do that, you just double click on here and make sure that you're in either Complex Pro or Beats mode. I'll go over the warp modes in another video. But Complex Pro sounds great typically, and you can transpose it up and down depending on the key of your song. So tuning is super important, because if you can imagine you have the kick in G and then you'd have your bass line in F, you're going to get kind of a weird pitch down effect when the kick and the sub hit at the same time, and they're kind of going to clash. So what we want is the tune of our kick drum and the tune of our sub bass to be the same exact tune. So the kick's on G, that means my sub bass most likely will be in G, that means the melody for the song will most likely be in G. Cool. So now we have tuning out of the way, we're just going to assume that I'm writing the song in G minor. So with that, now we can go into the fades. Kind of what I was telling you about earlier, how Ableton can put auto fades on your tracks. We also can use fades to make kick drums more or less strong. So in order to do that, you have to get out of automation mode, which is this little button right here. The shortcut is A. So if you hit A, it flips between fade mode and automation mode. And when you go hover over a clip, you get these fades. So you can make the beginning of the kick weaker. And then you can also make the tail end, or the sustain or release of the kick, weaker or stronger, depending. And you can also use this to shorten your kick drums. A really good tip that I do, and I tell a lot of my students this, is make your intro kick a little weaker with the fades, so that when your drop kick comes in, it sounds a lot stronger. So for now, I'm just going to add a little fade to the end of this, and I'm just going to duplicate it so we make sure we have the same 4 kicks. Cool. So that's fades. Very, very simple, but often also very overlooked. The next thing we're going to do is use an EQ. Now, a lot of people will say to use the Ableton EQ, but I personally have found a lot better success in getting a more professional sound using the Fabfilter EQ. So the Fabfilter Pro Q is what I'm going to be using. Now, these techniques apply to any EQ. You can do this on Ableton, Logic, FL Studio, anything, Waves, etc. So drop this on here and I get this. This is the Pro Q2, sorry, by Fabfilter. So with that said, basically what we're going to be wanting to do is just cutting out any, if we look at the spectrum too, and I play the kick, we'll notice there's a lot of frequencies below 20 hertz and even down to 11 hertz. And these are typically frequencies that we can't even hear or feel. So they're just taking up volume in the track. So what we can do with this is just set a low cut filter, 96 decibels per octave if you can. I know the Ableton one only goes to 48, which is fine, but that's again another reason why I like to use the Fabfilter EQ instead. So I'm going to set it to 10 hertz and I'm just going to leave it there. If I think there's too much rumbling and too much bass and I want to get a little of that bass out of there, I'd set it to 20 and I can just double click on the frequency and set it there. But for now, we'll go with 10 hertz. It sounds fine to me. So that's the EQ out of the way. So far we've tuned it, we've done fades, and now we have used the Pro Q to just make sure that any weird rumbling that might affect the speakers at a live show, at a club you're playing, or a festival, so it doesn't like rumble the speakers too much and take up too much volume in the mix down in the end. The next step I'm going to be showing you is the Transient Master. So this is a plugin I use. It's from Native Instruments. I got it with my Complete. And basically what it does is affects 2 parts of the drum sound. So if we look at this kick drum here, and I'm just gonna divide it and highlight it so you can see the pink part would be considered the attack of the kick drum, and the green part would be considered the sustain of the kick drum. So with that said, this plugin will boost the attack and make it more punchy, or weaken the attack if you go into the negatives and make it less punchy. Same thing with the sustain. So if you boost this, the sustain, the green part right here, will boost, and likewise you can make it weaker by putting it down. So this is really cool thing to do if you want to add more punch or less punch to your kick drums without using fades, or in conjunction with fades. I typically use it in conjunction with fades. So I'm just going to do this so the sample doesn't get weird and mangled. And from here, I'm going to play it and I'm just going to mess with the attack knob so you guys can hear what this is doing. So I went to 100% just to exaggerate the effect, but you guys can tell it's getting a lot more punch now on the beginning part of the kick drum. Same with the sustain knob. I'm going to just illustrate that for you really quick. So you can see you can kind of mess around with the sustain. I use this plugin more often just for the attack to give it that extra added punch I'd like. So I usually typically will put it anywhere from 20 to 30% just to kind of give it that extra punch. You can go all the way if you listen to songs like Valentino Khan songs. It sounds like this thing's at 100% to get that super in your face punchy kick. So it's really up to how you'd like the kick drum to sound. But Transient Master is a really good and in my opinion essential tool to make your kick drum sound better. So now that we have the Transient Master, I'll just drop this back down to 25-ish. Cool. So now that we have done the Transient Master, the next step is to limit the entire signal. So once again, you can use the Ableton limiter, but we're really going after that high quality professional sound. And in my opinion, the Fabfilter Pro L does hands down the best job in limiting. It's a very simple tool to use. It will just limit your kick drum or whatever you put in here based on the channel volume. So if I boost this gain knob, it won't ever pass 0, even if I smash this to 30. So I'm just going to show you, illustrate what this does. Now that's an exaggeration. Obviously, when I'm using it, I typically will have a -3 to -6 decibels of gain reduction. So if you look on this right-hand side of the plugin, it says 0 decibels, -3, -6. The redness that's coming down is what's getting chopped off the top, or what's passing the threshold on the limiter. So that's kind of getting smashed down or compressed. So with that said, the kick drum where it is already taking off -1.1 decibels. So I would just probably add anywhere from like 3 to 6. Might be a little too much. And now I have a limited kick drum that's getting a little more compressed than it was before. It gives it that extra power, and it also ensures that in the channel strip, we're not passing 0 decibels and clipping, because ultimately that's going to give you a bad time mixing down and mastering your song in the end result. So that's typically how I process my kick drums to give them a more professional sound. If you guys have any questions for a future episode, drop them in the comments below. Also, if you learned something, hit that like button, it helps out a lot. Lastly, if you guys are new around here, hit that sub button and bangerang that bell button. Make sure you guys will get notified next time I upload a production tutorial. Until next time, I'm PatrickReza. Peace.